Welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. I want to talk about action paralysis. And this comes up in the context of previous videos where I talked about weeds, like using livestock as weed control and working with our environment and the consequences of human involvement. So these weed patches, this is a consequence of human development, human involvement in the environment. And we have positive methods that we can use to work with these consequences, okay? The weeds, the invasive species, there's stuff we can do, okay? We can actually use them as food supplies, use them to build soil, use them for natural fertilizer. It's all labor intensive, and this is where action paralysis comes in, partly. Part of it is, it's labor intensive. But part of what we're dealing with here is also that it's administratively intensive. So there's regulations. There's people fighting for power. There's people fighting for position. There's going to be people fighting for access or profit. And you end up with action paralysis. This isn't a type of solution where a person can just go out and do it, okay? That's not completely entirely true. You can do, there's about a 20% thing, okay? No one's really going to complain if I go out and start harvesting weeds on public land around the canals at first. Once again, the moment people realize that I'm getting something out of it, then there's some sort of control mechanism that people will try to put into it. And so, action paralysis. And the action paralysis is mostly because other people are going to try to stop you. And this is an unfortunate part of the human condition, and I really don't have a good set of answers for this in something on the scale of global terraforming environmentalism. Okay, this is one of the reasons why the global warming fake environmentalism makes such inroads. People get to feel good about someone else doing something, and they don't have to deal with action paralysis. They don't have to deal with consequences. They don't have to deal with trying. They don't have to deal with paperwork, administrivia. It's all just such a fucking pile of shit that you have to deal with. And, we live in a world now in the United States, especially during this lockdown pandemic time, where just doing the most basic, simple things that the bureaucracy requires of you, the DMV. I harp on it because I've had to make multiple trips to fix things from multiple previous trips during the pandemic, and it's ridiculous, okay? I mean, we have people waiting in line in the desert in the summer who are like 70 years old in the heat. It's 100 degrees outside for 6 hours at a time. You can't bring them a chair because it's not sanitary. You literally can't bring chairs and set them out there to help people. I tried. Because it's not sanitary. You didn't disinfect the metal chairs, or no one can prove that you disinfected the metal chairs, or there's no control. All right. Action paralysis. Like, really, everything has a Karen, And the DMV at this point is such a nightmare. Just anything bureaucratic. Going to do your property taxes. Trying to get your vote recorded in person is actually a nightmare. Okay, we did this for the primaries. How are you supposed to do anything extra? You can't even get through basic administrative processes with your government. So how are you going to fix anything? Well, on one level, for you as an individual, looking at the world sideways, you just operate sideways as an individual. Okay, nothing I'm doing with this idea of terraforming environmentalism or stumbling towards utopia or distributism is something that you have to act on. It's not even something you should worry about. I'm just exploring ideas. Some of that is to contrast with what other people are doing so that you can see the differences. You can see that global warming environmentalism is a sham, okay? And I'm not saying that global warming does or doesn't happen. Climates change all the time. Every species of significance has some impact on that. Okay, don't care. I do care, but I don't care about how you feel about that, because that's just a basic truth. Global warming environmentalism takes that basic truth and tries to make it into something where you get to blame a set of humans for anything you don't like, and then use that blame as a method of control to control populations, get money and power. No! People want money and power, and if you're going to do a reasonably intelligent terraforming environmentalism, you need to work with that, okay? You need to work with the profit motive, you need to work with control, you need to work with power. Not going to argue about that. That's human nature, again. But global warming environmentalism is a sham. It's I hesitate to use the word globalist, but it's a globalist sham. And a lot of what I present to you in this series is going to be ideas and thoughts and observations that show the sham. In a positive sense, I'm also going to show you things that can actually work, can make the world into a fantastic and much better place. Because we have an amazing opportunity technologically at this moment in time to really change things up, to really, really make, to use the mythology that the environmentalists use, a Garden of Eden, a dynamic Garden of Eden. We can terraform the planet in ways that are just incredibly positive. Pollution control is a huge part of that, but resource usage and resource generation is also part of that. That's where you get into the pastoralist regenerative agriculture, where people talk about using livestock as a mechanism for regenerative agriculture, making resources, growing resources, not using resources. And so all of this is here. But none of it is meant to be something where you look at it and get all negative and be all like, no one can ever do this. However, you need to look at this set of set of factors that leads to action paralysis. And then you need to look at them in your life. What things do you not do in your life? Action paralysis. Because of administrative complications or prerequisites. Prerequisites is a term I love, prerequisites. I can't do the laundry because first I have to do this with my daughter, this with my son, and fix the washing machine and clean this and clean that. So doing the laundry becomes this complicated 4-hour process. Reduce that in your life. And the laundry thing's not actually a joke. If you have 4 kids, sometimes things get weirdly complicated until you use the proper solution, the Alexandrian solution to the Gordian knot, and just cut it out, okay? Action paralysis. I demonstrate this quite often when I talk about things in terms of environmentalism or stumbling towards utopia, distributism. We have these problems. You can't just go plant trees. Even just planting trees is complicated and fraught with all this stuff, okay? We need trees. We need a couple billion trees in the United States alone, just to help work with our urban heat problems. And on the one hand, Pick a species, plant a tree. You know, there's 330 million people in the country. It only takes 2 trees each. You know, you can do some aspects of this simply, but then you go to, for example, I'll show you a video of how the trees work with some of our shopping centers, and they pick the tree that gives the least shade, specifically because it requires the least maintenance. And wow, that like defeats the purpose of the requirement to plant trees. Again, action paralysis. Are you going to do any good? Is there anything going to matter? It always matters to your life. And every incremental little bit matters. You know, that's one of the things that the global warming pseudo-environmentalists actually miss. Is that it's not these huge mechanisms of climate change. It's all individual inputs. All of it is individual inputs. And individual responsibility and individual action are how you fix that. And they don't address things that way. It's all, you know, national carbon caps and tax on this industry and that industry. No, you know, that's not how it works. There are industries that have problems, but that's mostly marketing. And realistically, that mostly comes down to food and consumer goods. Okay, back on topic. Action paralysis. I want you to look in your life at things that you don't do. Look at why you are paralyzed, why you have the action paralysis. Is it something that you can resolve? Is it something that you can ignore? Because sometimes you just ignore it. Or is it something that you can cut through and remove? You know, resolve, ignore, remove, build, create, do. It's pretty simple. And again, simple doesn't mean easy. Simple means simple. Action paralysis is probably the biggest reason why people don't do things in these positive, forward-looking aspects. And I get it. I mean, I understand why we have the action paralysis. You know, I did the thing with the trees where I wanted to see if I could farm trees on the edges of the land out here. And the complications for the contracts was just insane. You would have to be a multi-billion-dollar corporation just to begin to structure how to make this work. You can't make it work on an individual basis. And that's pretty sad, you know? So, action paralysis. What's keeping you from doing the things that you want to do? Because the only way you're going to get your positive terraforming environmentalism, for example, is if you do the things that you need to do. You know, and that may not be your goal. That's fine. This is all a mental exploration of how we can, things that we can do, things to look at a little bit different and a little bit sideways. But it always brings up individual aspects of your life that you can look at sideways. So, what is your action paralysis? What can you resolve, ignore, or remove? All right, stay sideways. Have a good one.